Okay, so it's winter time, it's cold outside, but you really want to get out and ride your bike. Rather than getting cold feet, why don't you think about buying some Lake winter cycling shoes or boots? And what you'll probably find is your feet are a hell of a lot warmer and much more comfortable than they've ever been in any of the alternative products out there that are basically glorified pieces of crap. Excuse the language. Lake have a rundown of winter cycling shoes and boots. Oh, battery low. Lake have a selection of winter cycling shoes and winter cycling boots, and in this video I'm going to give you guys a rundown as to the kind of features and benefits, if you like, of each of the individual models. So first off, let's start out with the MXZ and the CXZ 176. Okay, right, so this one is an MXZ 176 and this one is a CXZ 176. So the primary difference in these two cycling shoes is the sole. Let's see, the sole is different. The CXZ 176 is the 3-hole, so if you're using SPD SL or Look Kios and you're doing primarily winter road riding, this is a shoe that you, on a dry day, you don't need an overshoe to ride. So it's gonna keep your foot warm to -2. You know, ideal temperature range would be between about -2 and like 5 degrees Celsius. If the road's a little bit wet but it's not raining, it's a sort of shoe you could wear with a lighter overshoe. You probably want front mud guards on your bike if you're going to try and keep your feet completely dry using this. It does have a waterproof treatment to it, which can be reapplied and can keep it waterproof when you're riding it. And it kind of is like a little bit more insulated basically than the step below this, which would just be kind of a more heavy duty, if you're using Lake as an example, a CX177. This shoe has a insulated insole in it, and it has a microfiber and not a leather upper. The thing that this shoe features in terms of the last, so the last, if you like, that this shoe is built around is a sport last. Now, for Lake, that just means a relatively high volume forefoot and slightly tighter up towards the heel than the other shoes in their winter range. Now, moving on to the MXZ 176. Basically, everything that I've said about the CXZ 176 is accurate for the MXZ 176. The main difference is this has a 2-hole. You can't see it because there's a sticker on it. This has two-hole cleat. So if you're using a Shimano SPD, a Shimano SPD or a Crank Brothers or other options for 2-hole cleats, this is for you. Now, this makes this shoe, ideal use case would be winter road riding again, but with SPD cleats, or winter kind of like cross style rides. Ideal commuter shoe really, especially like a lot of people who like to commute on SPDs. 2-hole cleats, because essentially, because this is recessed, so there's beginnings of lugs on this shoe, you can walk around on it. So you can walk around on hard floors. There's a bit of rubber on it, so you've got a little bit of grip. So that is fine for walking around on floors, pavement, without scratching up and ruining your cleats in 2 minutes. It's also useful when you're off-road, clambering over logs or covering a trail maybe. It's not a full-blown, you can't walk around in super heavy hardcore conditions with the shoe and expect it to last forever, but it is very, very rugged and very, very versatile, and is certainly a lot more capable than a lot of other off-road shoes out on the market. Next, this is the MXZ 120. So the MXZ 120 is built on Lake's Comfort Last. Now, the Comfort Last is more of a super high volume last. Difference between this shoe and the shoes below it as such, so this boot, there's a couple of main differences. So first of all, the last is more voluminous. You can have a look at the shape of the shoe. It is a lot broader and a lot squarer on the toe. So a foot shape that is kind of really big, really high volume, this shoe's gonna be for you. You can use this shoe as a flat shoe, so you can buy a covering. You can see there's just a recessed panel in here. You can get a cleat covering. Let me see if I've got one, hang on. Here is the cleat covering. This covering goes in here. All of a sudden, you have a shoe that is capable of being a flat shoe without getting water coming up in here and making your socks wet for you. This shoe does not have an insulated insole like the other shoes in the winter range. The insole in this is just a standard rubber-ish kind of foamy insole with a fabric upper on it. However, the boot is lined on the inside, so it's not just gonna keep your foot relatively warm. This is still a very capable shoe. It's leather on top, so it's really nice and soft. Feel like more of a held core, a harder rubber on the toe. So if you're gonna scrape it or bash it against something, there's a little bit more protection across the front of the shoe for you. It's high cuffed, so it's gonna be above your ankle, which can stop water getting in there, and it makes it a little bit better to ride if you're gonna be riding through puddles, splashing around on mud and what have you. It's gonna stop water going down in, through the top of the cuff. Other difference that this has is all the other shoes in the winter range feature a boa system on them. This just has a lace up, and there's benefits to a lace up. So for instance, it's much cheaper than the boa systems are. However, it's just as controllable if you're willing to spend the time tightening it up. So MXZ 120, a very good offering for someone with a high volume foot, wants to potentially ride as a winter boot with a flat shoe for commuting, riding around with their mates, and is capable of light trail as well. Moving up in the range, let's have a look at the MX and CX 146. These shoes are available in regular and wide, and also feature the Sport Last that Lake has in its arsenal of foot lasts. Now, let's start with the CX 146. This CX 146 has a waterproof covering and is basically got the 3-hole system. So again, Shimano SPD SL, Look Keo, Time, what have you. You can also ride these with speed plays if you want to put the adapter plate on. It's not available in a 4-hole though, just in case you were wondering. The Last is very comfortable. You can't really walk around on these shoes off-road. It would just be a silly idea. There's no grip on the sole. However, winter road riding, a little bit wetter. For me, I've ridden these shoes down to really, when I say really cold, it's not ridiculous. -4, like -3 would be kind of like a maximum that these shoes are capable of. And these shoes are maybe more of a 2 to 3 hours shoe that would keep your foot warm enough. If you have, if you have a cleat on there without holes in the bolts, then there's not going to be any water that's going to go in there, and it's high cuffed so that, again, water isn't going to go splashing down the front. If you have front mud guards, or even if you don't have front mud guards, these shoes are particularly good at keeping the water out because of this system across the tongue. So you can just push that over, no water's getting up from the inside of there. And the other great thing about this is it's got an oversized boa. So if you have thick winter gloves on, you're going to be tightening this up without having to worry about taking your gloves off first to be able to flick a tab up and then twist it and then flick it back down again. This just pulls out, pulls in, twist, your shoe's tightened. Ideal. Yeah. Other little nice features on this shoe would be Other nice features on the shoe would be the reflective panels on the front and the rear. And it is kind of almost perfect for a road rider who's wanting a shoe that is just a little bit slimmed down compared to some of the other offerings in the Lake winter range. It's gonna keep your foot very warm on a rough winter's ride, and way superior to just putting overshoes on your normal summer cycling shoes. You could ride, if you really wanted to ride this shoe on a 3 or 4 hour ride, it's still more than capable of that. The longest I've ridden in it for would be about 2.5 to 3 hours on a pretty cold day. My feet were totally fine by the end, as in I easily think I could have got another hour or 2 out of these boots in a really cold wet winter's ride with no front mudguard on my bike. I would have been totally fine. Now, this is the MX 146. This shoe is basically identical in terms of the same last, available regular wide. It's got the same oversized boa, the same reflective panels on it. As a boot, it's got a nice high cuff. And again, a little thing I missed in the last shoe is this big tab on it. You can pull it up. It just makes it much easier to get on with winter gloves on. the big difference between this shoe and the Lake CX 146, the MX 146 has the 2-hole cleat. You can put studs in if you want, and it's got essentially the beginnings of lugs here. So there's a hinged toe here and lugs on the sole, which makes it quite easy to walk around on with plenty of grip. So this is an ideal winter commuting boot. If you're the sort of cyclist that likes to ride year round, you know, from like A to B, getting to work, needing to jump off your bike and walk through an office block or what have you, this shoe is perfect because there's a recess for the cleats to go in, and there's plenty of grip for like a wet pavement or what have you. It's kind of like perfect for any weather that you would be actually able to commute in. You know, when it gets to like -10 and -15, obviously, well, I mean, some people might be wild enough to go out in those conditions to ride to work. However, if you're in Scotland, this is kind of like a perfect, like dark winter's road, like get to work in a morning. Your feet are gonna be more than happy inside of this shoe for that level of distance and time. This shoe is kind of rated to like -2, 3, up to about like, you know, 10 degrees Celsius. So it's like gonna be ideal for those conditions. It features an insulated insole and it's a fully lined boot inside. So you've got kind of that kind of winter fabric. How would I describe it? It's a lined winter boot, like it's gonna keep your foot nice and warm. This is the MXZ 304. So this shoe is a proper step up in terms of capabilities. When I say capabilities, the capabilities of being able to keep your feet warm when you're outside in cold conditions. This boot is capable of riding conditions down to about -10, and the last on this shoe is different to all of the other boots underneath it in the range. This shares the same last as the MXZ 400, which is the big monster boot that Lake has, top of the tree, Siberian winter, crazy like winter boot. This shoe is much more capable than a lot of the other shoes out there on the market in terms of being able to keep your feet warm. It's packed with features. It's got an oversized bow at the front, reflective panels on the back, but the key things with this shoe compared to the other ones are the depth of the lugs. Now, these lugs here, they're super grippy, so you could walk around, you could, you know, basically hike in this boot. You can walk this boot through rivers. It's got attachment for gaiters, so you can put gaiters, so I see it on the front, like, it's just much more kind of versatile to use. It's got 2-stage adjustment, so you can pull this strap off, pull this boa off, pull it out. Okay, so you put your foot in the shoe, you tighten it up, and then this 2-stage adjustment just allows for a little bit more control when you're tightening the shoe up. Super nice. It's super lined, so the liner inside this boot is substantially thicker than the MX 146 underneath it, and the insole inside is substantially more insulated. The height and the breadth of this toe box is substantially higher volume than the MX 146, and that's just to allow for bulky winter socks in combination with the fully lined, if you like, interior of this boot. It's a full grain sort of leather, well, not full grain leather, it's a petard's leather is what they call it, upper, which is essentially, to me, it's a thicker, heavier duty leather. It's just, I guess, more protective against the harsh conditions. And the Hellcore toe, which again is like a super tough wearing, thicker style of leather that just stands up to abuse a little bit better than like I guess the softer grain leather being on the front. So this is the MXZ 304. It's a fantastic winter boot. And there you go, that just summarizes my talk through really of comparing the winter road and off-road lineup from Lake Cycling Shoes. I hope it was informative. If you have questions about the range further than that, please feel free to drop something in the comments. I'll get back to everyone if I can. And then if you want more information about the shoes, please head to edinburghbikefitting.com, link below in the description. And if you fancy buying a pair of Lake shoes, please support us. It would mean so much to me. Thanks very much for watching.